clicker?
You sure do.
Wow.
The power is all yours, my friend.
Well, this definitely fits for weird, because this feels very weird to me. Yeah, so I am a founder of RVA Magazine, and we started that in 2005, and RVA was not a thing in 2005. It was RIC, and I was 3 years out of school and pretty angry and frustrated by the way Richmond was, and there was a lot of people my age also felt the same way. So this is a picture of me in 2005, and I was pretty broke. I was working at a sushi restaurant, and I had worked on a magazine before called Chew on This in 2003, and it was a local magazine, and it didn't work out. And I sat on it. I got a job, a corporate gig, and I did all the things I was supposed to do. I went to college, VCU, and got my steady job, my salary job, and yeah, I got fired. And because I really hated it. I just felt, I don't think it was because of me. It was just not a good fit, and it's not for everybody. So I took a job at my friend's restaurant, rolling sushi and flipping tater tots in the back, and was telling people like, hey, I have this idea and I want to do another magazine. And I think if somebody just focused on younger Richmond, if there was a new idea for Richmond, I think people would get behind it. And I had heard the term RVA at a punk show at a venue on Gray Street. At the time, it was called the Nancy Ray Gun. And I thought, that sounds really cool. It sounds really local. I don't know how to put that into words, So this is me taking this beat-up camera and working First Fridays and sneaking these pictures and trying to get an idea of what Richmond culture was. So, and here's the logo. So I was drawing this logo, and I was cooking, and I had a little notebook, and I was telling people, this is the idea. We need a brand. We need a banner. We need something to get behind, And every time I was so positive about Richmond, it was working because everybody was so negative about it. So I kind of stuck out. It was like, hey, Richmond's pretty cool. Everybody, just why don't we get together and change it? Why don't you stop complaining and stop going to New York and feeling like we're going to LA and feeling like you have to leave and then maybe come back. We can do it here. We can essentially make our own party here instead of joining someone else's party. So I just imagined this thing, and I'm a big comic book nerd, so I kind of based it off the Batman logo. I was thinking if I could project it on the moon, everybody would see it and people would get it. Yeah, and I think just by being a little goofy about it, people were like, listen to me. So, and to make that happen, I started taking my little sketch and my idea to people around town, and one of the first people I met was Jeremy Parker. And he was an artist. He still is an artist, but I put together a show for him. And he had all these great paintings, and he's a very spiritual person, so he got it. Where we were kind of opposites. He was very extroverted. He became the promoter. He became the face. He was out recruiting people. So I told him, and he ran with it. So that's why I say I'm a co-founder, because even if the idea came from me, the idea would not have happened without him. This is my buddy Ian, and he was just a true believer. He had a car, an old Volvo called the Bricklayer. It didn't run very well, and he'd be the guy to put the magazines in the car. He'd deliver them with me, and we used to sell them for $5. So what we did was we went to all the coffee shops and grocery stores and anybody that would take them, and I said, hey, look, I want to drop 10 off, and we'll call you on Monday and on Thursday. And for every one that you sell, you owe me $3. And that was some hard sledding right there. It was like, some weeks it'd be like, hey, we collected some money, and it'd be like, Ian, let's get some coffee, because that's all I can afford, you know? And I just working our jobs, and every dollar I had, I lived it and I slept. You know, my workstation was right next to my bed. I had a little studio, and yeah, when I wasn't working at the sushi bar, I'd be working on that. And it was every month, and it just became a rhythm. And I did that it was a monthly for 4 years. And eventually, started picking up steam, and eventually it was like, okay, now we can go free, because people want to advertise now, and they don't want it to be for sale. They want us to give it out, and they'll pay me money to make sure that we just give it away. And it was like, okay, now it's like paying for itself, but I still need to work my other job. And we did that for a long time. And this is my buddy Todd. He's a multimedia artist, and he just was such a rock for me. He's an educator at Maggie Walker now. And he's such a strange guy. He's such a deep thinker. So he's always keeping me on my toes, and keeping, like, once we had developed this idea of RVA and what it meant, I kind of had a ring of counselors that kind of were telling me what it was and kept me in check. Was like, this is what it is. Remember that. I'm like, all right. And I'm trying to develop a business around it. But then I had all this kind of energy around me that was keeping the course. So we had to figure out what local culture meant. And this is the first sticker that we made. It's a group called Team 8. And so we need to figure out, so we needed to go out and actually think about it and kind of digest it, and then put it into words, and then put it into print, and then give it out to people. And then when people were asking about it, be like, this is what local culture is, and you're missing it. You're missing it. And they're like, what is RVA? And I remember standing at First Fridays, and I had this really bad polyester coat, and I had a little stand, and people were looking at the magazine, and some people were really interested, and some people were like, what does that mean? And it's like, well, RVA is a new way of looking at Richmond. It's progressive, it's inclusive, it's creative, and it's us. This is what's going on, and if you don't understand it, then you need to ask somebody or pick up the magazine, right? So, and this was what's going on in Gray Street. It's still going on, but this is from 2005. This is a buddy of mine. This is a band called Municipal Waste. I kind of want to be over here. And this is one of the first paintings that was submitted to me. And the piece is about 6 foot wide. And I thought, wow, there's some real artists here, and they want to work with us. And some more energy, we would go to these shows and come back and be so excited and be like, wow, we have some great photos to work with. Who are these bands? Why do they matter? My buddy Ken Howard came, and I interviewed him, and he had all these weird photos. Don't ask me what's going on in this photo, really. But I just love this one. I put it on the cover. This is Tim Wilson, and that's a painting. I saw his work and was like, this is Richmond? How come no one has interviewed this guy? I felt like I was just sitting on something. So at the same time, a gallery was being formed, Gallery 5, which is an old fire station. And this woman, she was pretty young at the time, Amanda Robinson, was telling us about this space. So it was like, well, we have an idea, now we have a place to put the idea. And how fortunate is that? I mean, you couldn't ask for a better situation. So the first magazine, we dropped it in Gallery 5. And it was packed. And people bought the magazine, and people were talking about it. And then all of a sudden, RVA had a home. And so we worked with them very closely for a long time. And Parker and Amanda worked together a lot. This is a picture from Style, Scott Elmquist. probably took this one. They started doing a Carnival of Five Fires. They started having fire twirling and music outside, and they started doing exhibitions where everybody was completely nude, and there was long lines, and we were really shaking things up, and it felt like, it felt like a worthy fight. It felt like this was the right thing. And here's just some of the covers. And it's really strange to look at all this work and know that month by month we were putting it out. And I know what I was doing in every one of those issues, my personal life, it became like a diary for me. It became a way like, okay, now I understand who I am through this project. And in the process, I got to know all these people. Well, most of them. Some people I never met, but a lot of them. And this is all local work. And no one had taken the time to find it. And we did about 70 of these, and this is from 2005 to 2009. I have to mention MySpace. I have to, if people remember that. I'm sure you do. The one advantage that major publishing had over anybody was, the numbers they could do. It was like, we can put out tens of thousands of issues. We control all the sites, everything. The one thing that Richmond media did not do was develop their social media. So how do we get people out to events? How do we tell them about the magazine dropping? How do we tell them about anything? It was like, why don't we take the time? And I actually told the other guys, I was like, I want to spend an hour adding people to our MySpace. Only Richmond people. So I'm going to spend an hour, you're going to spend an hour, you'll spend an hour. We'll do this every day for weeks until we get to about 10,000. And then when we have a party, which helps pay for the magazine, and each person's chipping in $5, we'll have 400 people come. And that way we can still keep doing the magazine. Otherwise, we can't. So we have to party to make sure the magazine happens. So I got really good at throwing parties. It was just like over and over again. It was like, and then other people were asking us to do parties all the time, and we were sponsoring parties, and at one point it was like 14 parties a week. Our brand was on it, and I was running at least 2 or 3 every week, and it was like, all right, so I'm working, and then I'm partying, and then I'm working, and it just became a crazy blur, and it was not sustainable, but it was necessary to get ahead. And by the time the other media caught up with us on social media, we were already dominating in that space. It was like they were catching up with us. It was like, this is crazy. And this never happened before, and I don't think it'll ever happen again. So we started figuring out how to make it a business, and this is my buddy Christian, and this is just how he is. He's a salesperson. So he came in and was like, hey, you have all this great energy. You need to figure out how to sell it because you're terrible. And I was like, I know that. I have a lot of energy, but I'm not. So I bowed down to him, and he helped formulate the business side of it to have it make sense to people when I'm talking to them about advertising. Because I had the art part right and the idea right, but we didn't have this is how you create a business. And this is that's my first business partner on the left, Adam. And this is when the Queen of England came to town. We tried our best to get an interview with the Queen of England. It didn't work out. So we had, this actually happened without me really knowing it. They mentioned it, and then the next thing I know, there's these photos. That's my first designer, Brandon Peck. Love that guy. And Adam now is in charge of some serious government agency thing in DC. I'm not lying about that. He's a very serious person now. And he hates that I have these photos. But at least he's in disguise, so. And, this is like looking at old high school photos. I'm like, this is such a goofy photo. But we started putting our stuff together and was like, hey, why don't we be a major media in Richmond? And I was like, is that an impossible idea? It's like, people are actually listening. There's like, we are ahead of the game in so many different ways. So I was like, well, how do we get this idea that we have to the masses? And it's like, well, what are we good at? It's like, well, we're good at talking about arts and culture, and we're really good at throwing parties. So the merchants, the Carytown merchants, they had never had a New Year's party before. And this is 2006, and I got asked in October, because we started a thing called Halloween, which is a week of Halloween parties. So it was like, why only do 1 week or one night of Halloween? Why don't we do a whole week? So many freaks in town, they want to dress up every day, and we can help our, business partners. We can have parties at their spot. So that was such a good idea at the time. Now it's like, I'm too old to, John right there. We're kind of over the Halloween thing. But they asked me to do this, and yeah, I didn't know what I was doing. And actually, Sarah Daves, who works at Creative Mornings, she threw an event, I think the year before, and I just met her on a whim walking the street at an event that I wanted to throw after hers the same day, where I put a wrestling ring in the middle of Gray Street. You remember that? Yeah. And it was like, who are you? And she's like, oh, I'm doing an event during the day. Why don't you link up? And I was like, okay, let's do this. So she's the only one I knew that could get barricades, that liked to do paperwork. I was like, well, I'm good at the other side. Why don't you take care of that side, please? And so she like mothered me through it. And I was like, well, I got asked to do this Carytown thing. I think it might be fun. We're going to put a stage in front of the bird, and maybe a few people will come out, and it's free. And we'll get the RVA logo out and the RVA idea out, and maybe it'll be awesome. I was like, whoa. So that's the first year. We had about 9,000 people, 8,000 people, and that's Parker. And Parker was on the roof there, and he was emceeing, and you can barely see it. There are people like on the roofs partying, and everybody had their own parties. And at this time, Carytown was kind of a sleepy strip mall. There was no bars. Actually, there were 2 bars. Wheezy's and New York Deli had opened up, and we were working a lot with New York Deli. And then after this, it became kind of a hip thing, It's like, well, what about Carytown? So we got asked to do another one. And this time, I'm having meetings with Virginia Lottery and AT&T, so I'm learning how to pitch actual corporations, and that was very strange. And to fit with the thing, very weird for me. I was like, okay, well, we went from dealing with mom and pop shops, and now I'm sitting across from Virginia Lottery, and they're about to cut me a check for 20 grand. I was like, wow. And this is my buddy. He put him in a diaper. And there's people back here. You might see it. This is us over here, and we're stopping traffic. And we were like, no, please don't run over my friend. It's obviously kind of weird. And my photographer's laying in the street, and I was like, I have this idea. We need to do it, and I don't think we should ask permission. I think we should just go and do it. And so we did a really nice commercial, which, I don't know, somebody could look it up. I also got the Carytown, the year started messing with me. I was like, well, we're throwing it in 2007, but then it goes in 2008. Should we? That's why the last one was 2006. We kind of skipped 2007. Anyway. And we had a lot of people come out. And I told the police, first time dealing with City Hall, I was sitting at this giant oak table, and not knowing exactly what I was doing, I drew these maps and was like, this is where the stage is, and this is how the barricades are, and this is where people are coming in. And like, well, how many people do you think's coming? I said about 23,000 people. In my mind, I was like, it's going to be 3 times as big, and it's going to be crazy. And they're like, well, do you have an evacuation plan? I said, honestly, that's your job. I was like, you're trying to give that to me. That's your job. So they figured it out, and they got really scared after this event. And that goes back about 9 blocks. And I'm standing there on the roof yeah, it was an overwhelming moment. It's the thought that all of us who were nobodies just had an idea. Yeah, that kind of changed things for me. I was like, wow, this is a validation. This is a possibility. People were like learning what RVA was. People were looking us up. People started using RVA. And yeah, then that's where the politics got involved. That's why I didn't do it the next year. Everybody wanted to try to get a piece of it. That's why Carytown New Year's went on after me, and it got worse, progressively worse, because more and more people were trying to hold it. They were trying to make money off of it. And it was like, I don't know. And I think this worked because we were just so like, hey, everybody come have a good time. Everybody's included. I mean, look at us, you know? Like, who doesn't feel like they can be part of it? And that's the ball. And so this is like 2007. Next thing I know, I get a call, and it's like, hey, my buddy wants to start, or my girlfriend wants to start RVA babysitters. I was like, well, that's odd, you know? And then it was like, hey, did you hear about RVA bikes? These guys started RVA News. I was like, what is this? You know? And then everything started becoming this thing where, and it became a realization that, oh, bikes.com probably was taken, but RVA Bikes hasn't been. And it gives it a place, and it makes it unique. So all of a sudden it was like RVA cupcakes, RVA dresses. Everything was RVA all of a sudden because people were trying to place themselves in the city and make themselves unique. And so it just started getting out there. So I get a phone call from some interns at the brand center. They're like, well, they're trying to figure out a new brand for the city. We suggested RVA. We love the magazine. Can we come talk to you? And it was two different groups, and they both came and talked to me about it. And they're like, what does it mean? And I was like, well, it means this. And they're like, well, you did all this crazy stuff. And I was like, yeah, but we're just working, and we just want this idea to get out there, and, thank you for coming and listening to me. A few months later, I get a call, and they're like, hey, Tony, and this is like Venture Richmond, the Brand Center, some ad agency, I forgot. They're like, hey, this is the stuff we want to do. And we want to put out these stickers. And we want to do 80,000 of these stickers. And we put them on every public vehicle in the city. What do you think? And I thought, you probably don't want me to sue you is probably what's going on. Like, you want to make sure that we don't have a conflict here. So you want to make sure that I'm cool with it. And I thought, essentially, you're doing my work for me. It'd be great to see it out there. I can't afford to put out 8,000 stickers. And they're like, hey, everybody can customize the sticker, and they put it on their car. And I was like, well, sure. And if it doesn't work out, no sweat on my back, right? Our logo's different. Our idea is aligned somewhat, but now you're putting it out there. So I don't know, 2 weeks later, I'm taking out the trash, and I see the trash truck, and I see this giant RV sticker, and it's probably twice the size of that. And I thought, no way. And I think I called John. I was like, dude, this is really crazy. He's like, yeah, I saw it on a police car today. And then it was like just everywhere. And then people were putting them and getting so excited about it. I was like, wow, this is... Again, it was just an idea. I was rolling sushi. There was a bunch of other people that just had a lot of energy, had no direction. It was like, this is an idea that we had, and now it's out there, and it's taking a life of its own. So this is my buddy John. He got in the company probably around 2009. We've been friends since we were 14. And I actually think this is after New Year's, because I think that cup is full of vodka. And, and we feel a little cocky here. And, John is also a DJ. And right around 2010, the original group of guys, we weren't making enough money. We had been doing it for 4 years, it kind of getting burnt out. I was in my early 30s thinking about, well, what do I do? And then, the financial crisis was real. I don't know if anybody had a business at that time, 2008, 2009. Nobody really wanted to advertise. That was kind of the last thing. People were trying to survive. So it was like, well, should I get a job? And I applied at Martin Agency, and they were offering me a design gig. And I thought, wow, an agency would be a lot of fun. And then John reminded me, like, hey, this could be, look at all the stuff that we have already done. Why don't you continue to do the mag, and I'll go out and sell it, and I'll be that guy. And I was like, all right, we'll give it a shot. And so the first thing that we got involved with was a weekly party at Hat Factory. Because when you get down, you got to party. You got to figure that stuff out. So we had 1,500 people on a Tuesday for about 24 weeks, and it kind of sparked electronic music in town. And this is a picture of John as George Washington on in a raft. That was a great night. That was really fun. And I'll spare you the other pictures. If I have to give a talk on just that, I could. But that was crazy. So that got me excited again. I really had burnt out. And we were like, hey, if I'm going to do a magazine, instead of doing a monthly, let's do a quarterly. And if I'm going to do a quarterly, I want to go oversized. I want to see these pictures big. And I want to focus on the website. And I want to put out articles every day. And I want to help and figure out how to market the businesses that advertise with us, because they need the help. So we really formed some real relationships at that time, because we were giving breaks to people. We were just trying to help any business owner that wanted our help. We were just trying to survive, and we kept doing it. And I don't have the newest issues up here, but we're at 25, and then I did 70 some of the other one. I'm close to 100 published mags, which is crazy to think about. And then we started doing these little mini mags too, on photography, and I got to meet Cindy Hicks today. She's out there somewhere. She took these great punk photos. We're gonna do a book together, I think, hopefully. Art book, murals. I did a music festival. Had about 3,000 people come out, where we bridged a couple of national acts with local acts. At this time, my buddy Kevin Clay, is he here? No? He had a thing called Gay RVA, and he got a job at a nonprofit and he gifted this to me. And I was like, well, I don't know. He's like, no, you're the right one. So this was a big deal for us, because it kind of gave us, along our core mission, not only of music and art, but also diversity. And this is in 2012, I think, right when everything changed, when all the laws changed and all these great movements happened. And I also picked up Brad Kuttner. He's our current web editor, my main antagonist, my friend. Send that picture to Brad. And then, the Richmond Mural Project. You might have seen some of the murals around town. I had called Shane from Art Wino in 2009, asked him to come down and maybe do some murals in Scott's Addition. And he gave me a proposal. We met with the people, and everything seemed great, and then it fell apart. And I promised him, I was like, look, I will never waste your time again. If I give you a call, it'll be, having lined everything up. So the mayor announces that we have an arts district on Broad Street. I was like, there's probably like 6 galleries on Broad Street. You can't dub an arts district and just make it happen. It has to have art in it. So I was like, that's gonna be our pitch, I was like, Shane, you've been doing that in DC. We have our case study from Wynwood in Miami. Yeah, it's Wynwood, I think, where they took a warehouse district and made it into this art mecca. And so the vision was like, that's what we're gonna pitch. And so he came down and he brought a pixel poncho from Italy. And he's a very Italian guy. He's so excited about it. He's getting me excited. He's like, look at these walls, it's perfect. And I was like, okay, great. We should go talk to some people. I want you to come with me. And we met the right people, and so we started putting murals up. We started bringing international artists to Richmond to put murals up with the idea that it would probably spark a local movement for murals. It would raise the bar for local artists. It would also take Richmond art out, because you have these international people coming in. They're taking Richmond with them. They're taking the idea of RVA with them. I'm spending a lot of time with them, letting them know how inclusive Richmond is, how cool Richmond is. Every year, we've been doing it for 5 years. Now we have 100 and some murals out. Now Richmond's known for its murals, which is insane. But that was the idea. It was like this, again, it's a small step. You need to take steps. You can't just jump out and proclaim it. I'm not somebody to get in front of a lot of people other than today, but just kind of like we need to keep walking in that direction, and eventually it'll become what it needs to become. And then I got involved with Gung Ho Guides, which is a little like map pamphlet. And then I came back around after 8 years to do New Year's on Browns Island. And I did it to prove to myself that I could do it. It was like I was scared to do it, because when I did it earlier, I didn't know any better. And then 8 years later, I'm getting older and being like, it's probably not the best idea to try this. But it turned out okay. We had a lot of people come out. So I think the whole point of this talk, I was trying to figure out, like, okay, what do I do? I'm not one to feel comfortable talking about myself. It's very along the theme, very weird for me. The power of having an idea. Anybody could have an idea. It's having that and then seeing it through and making sure all the decisions that you make sense to that idea. And then telling people about it and being flexible, because the idea can also evolve. So if you want people to believe you, you also have to be open to their input. So the RV idea has been going back and forth now for 10 years. And I had no idea it would turn into what it is now. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
That's great, yeah. We'll do just a question or two.
Oh, okay.